Welcome to the deep dive. We're about to embark on a really captivating journey today.
Absolutely.
It might just change how you think about the origins of everyday things, from the clothes you're wearing right now to the systems that keep our cities healthy.
Right.
It's easy to assume certain foundational ideas just sort of appear.
Kind of nowhere.
Exactly. But often their roots reach back to places and times that honestly might surprise you. So let's unpack this fascinating history.
And what's really remarkable here is how these threads of innovation weave through millennia, across continents. They've influenced global development in some really profound ways. Our deep dive today looks into ancient Indian innovations that have genuinely shaped the world. We're talking foundational sciences, arts, things we just consider essential now. And the sources we've gathered, they reveal this rich tapestry, historical, technological, cultural insights. It really tells a story of global ingenuity.
And our mission, as always, is to cut through all that information overload.
Yeah.
We want to deliver the most important sort of nuggets of knowledge.
Get to the core of it.
Yeah, exactly. We want you to feel well-informed and maybe, just maybe, experience a few aha moments about the incredible interconnectedness of, human creativity across history.
That's a great topic.
So, where should we start? How about something incredibly fundamental, something that touches all our lives, like every single day? Textiles.
Good starting point.
When you think about the clothes we wear, did you know that their journey, in a really significant way, might lead us all the way back to ancient India?
Indeed it does.
Yep.
The story of Indian textile technology, it starts remarkably early. We're talking stretching back to the ancient Indus Valley civilization.
That far back.
Oh, yes. Archaeological finds from sites like Maheshwar, and this dates back to around 1500 BC, they've unearthed implements like spindle whorls.
Those are the little weights for spinning thread, right?
Exactly. Those plus spools, parts of spinning wheels, weaver shuttles, needles, thimbles, the whole kit. And we even have textile impressions on pottery from Ujjain from maybe 300, 200 BC.
Impressions, like fabric pressed into the clay.
Precisely. And what's even more interesting, impressions on potsherds found at Rang Mahal suggest textiles weren't just for clothing. They were used in the pottery manufacturing process itself.
How so?
Well, perhaps to line molds or maybe help dry the vessels evenly. It shows how integrated it was.
That's a powerful thought. Textiles weren't just a craft, but actually part of other technologies. And what about cotton specifically? The story seems to get even clearer there. I was really struck by some of the details in the sources.
Oh, definitely.
What really stands out about cotton's earliest journey in India?
Well, the Greek philosopher Theophrastus, a student of Aristotle, he provided one of the first definite sort of written conceptions of Indian cotton cultivation around 350 BC.
Okay.
And even before that, companions of Alexander the Great noted the distinctive Indian dressing style. Plus, Greek writers like Nearchus, Strabo, Curtius Rufus, they consistently affirmed cotton's Indian origin.
So the Greeks knew.
They certainly did. And ancient India clearly had a flourishing textile industry. Buddhist and Jaina literature from that era, they reference 18 distinct crafts and occupations.
18? Like what?
Specifically, including specialized silk weavers, calico printers, tailors, real specialization. And this Indian cotton and muslin, it was incredibly valuable. It reached places like Alexandria, Rome, all via sea routes.
Big exports then.
Huge. Aryan's Indica, that ancient Greek text, it even records Indian cotton as being whiter and brighter than any other.
High praise.
Absolutely. And if you look into temple literature, like the epic Silappatikaram, you get these vivid descriptions of bustling streets in cities like Madurai, Urai, or Kavarapatnam, just packed with cloth merchants and weavers.
So our clues really do tell a story of innovation. And sometimes the biggest breakthroughs, they come in the smallest details, don't they?
They often do.
From the fabric itself, let's maybe zoom in on a tiny but revolutionary invention.
Right.
The button. How does that fit into this picture?
The button. Its history is surprisingly rich, actually. Before buttons, people used, toggles or lacings to fasten garments.
Right, simpler methods.
Exactly. But the crucial innovation, the thing that really changed things, was the buttonhole.
The hole itself.
Yes, because that allowed for truly fitted clothing. And the thinking is that idea might have been brought to Europe by crusaders returning from the Middle East.
Interesting connection.
And Vikings, too. They were using buttons by the 13th century, likely through their extensive trading networks.
So it wasn't just fashion, it was practical.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
efficiency, and fit. And the growing importance is clear because you see button-making guilds established in 13th century France under King Louis IX.
Guilds just for buttons.
Yes, and they were strictly categorized by material. You had makers for horn, bone, ivory, then others for metals, and even specialists for precious metals and glass.
Wow, quite the industry.
It became one. And by the 17th century in Europe, you see fabric-covered buttons, exquisitely embroidered ones, becoming really popular.
More decorative then.
Often, yeah. They weren't just functional. They were small decorative elements. You'd see them adorning garments like the justicore. That's a kind of long coat, sometimes from neck all the way down to the knee.
It's remarkable how much history is packed into something so, well, seemingly simple as a button.
Isn't it just?
Okay, after delving into the delicate threads of textiles, let's shift focus. Let's plunge into the raw power of metal.
Okay.
Think about something like a legendary sword, a symbol of strength, progress. Where do you think the story of its incredible material truly begins?
Well, that story, for one of the most remarkable steels ever created, begins in South India, probably as early as 300 BC.
300 BC again.
Yes, this innovation, known as Wootz steel, and it was produced for nearly 2 millennia, right up until about 1800 AD.
2,000 years. That's incredible staying power.
It really is. This entire period is often called the First Age of Steel, and that's because it featured crucible steelmaking.
Crucible steelmaking. What does that mean exactly?
It means they melted iron in small clay pots, crucibles, with specific additives like carbonaceous materials. This produced a much more consistent, true steel compared to earlier methods, more homogeneous.
Okay, got it.
They figured out, presumably through a lot of trial and error, how to infuse wrought iron with just the right amount of carbon. They did this by heating it in charcoal for days.
For days? How hot?
Pretty hot. Between 1050 and 1100 degrees Celsius for maybe 5 to 7 days. This precise process gave the steel its superior qualities: strength, flexibility, hardness.
And this is the steel used for the famous Damascus blades, right?
That's the one?
The famous wavy pattern, the jawhar. It isn't just beautiful, is it? It's like a signature of this advanced science.
Exactly. That distinctive wavy pattern actually comes from the precise interaction of the iron and carbon elements within the steel, how they arrange themselves at a microscopic level as the steel cooled.
So the structure itself.
Right. Metallurgists call the phases cementite and pearlite. But here's the really mind-blowing part. Recent research suggests that pearlite's unique shimmer, that pearl-like luster, it comes from something like a photonic crystal effect.
Like how a crystal interacts with light.
Sort of, yes. A finely structured material interacting with light in a special way. It suggests these ancient artisans were, well, maybe accidental nanotechnologists.
Nanotechnologists.
Yeah.
Seriously.
In a way, creating these nanometer-scale carbon patterns through a natural process called spinodal decomposition during the forging. It's fascinating.
That is amazing.
And it captivated modern scientists, too. Michael Faraday, the inventor of electricity.
Of course.
He, along with James Stoddard, meticulously analyzed Wootz steel. They tried to replicate it. They were essentially laying groundwork for modern materials science, inspired by this ancient steel.
Wow.
And later, a renowned metallurgist, Cyril Stanley Smith, he ranked Damascus steel among the foremost outstanding metallurgical researches in all of history.
That's high praise indeed. The prestige of Wootz steel is just legendary, isn't it? I read somewhere that Prophet Muhammad, back in the 8th century, is said to have owned a sword made from this steel.
That's a commonly cited tradition, yes.
And those descriptions from the Crusades are just incredible. Like, one blow of a Damascus sword would cleave a European helmet without turning the edge.
Or cut through a silk handkerchief drawn across it. Yeah, those accounts speak volumes about its sharpness and durability.
They really do. So I'm curious, given how superior this tech was, how widespread was it? Was it like a closely guarded secret, or did it get around?
Oh, it definitely got around. Far from a localized secret, this was more like a semi-industrial enterprise across southern India.
Semi-industrial.
Yeah, we have eyewitness accounts from European travelers, 17th and 19th centuries, describing large-scale production and really extensive trade.
How large scale are we talking?
Tens of thousands of ingots shipped just from the Coromandel coast to Persia. The Dutch, for example, they exported hundreds of thousands of ingots from Machilipatnam.
Hundreds of thousands? Where did they go?
Persia, Syria, East Africa. So it's a bit of a misconception that Damascus swords were solely a West Asian thing.
Right. The name is a bit misleading then.
It can be. In fact, there are numerous Indian examples of these swords, with those distinctive patterns found in various armories, Mughal, Tipu Sultan, others, often set in these beautiful, bejeweled hilts.
Tipu Sultan's swords, I've heard of those.
Yes, made in Mysore around 1782. They're famous for featuring tiger stripes and Quranic inscriptions, highly sought after by collectors even today.
Amazing. But there was a downside later, wasn't there? With the British?
Tragically, yes. A dark consequence of British colonial rule, especially after the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, was the systematic shearing, basically destroying many of these incredible Wootz sword blades.
Such a loss. That's a really compelling story of ancient prowess. And speaking of remarkable metals, how about zinc?
Zinc, another fascinating one.
You might be surprised, listeners, to learn about its origins, especially since it's a metal that's actually quite challenging to work with, isn't it?
It really is quite special. And the earliest firm evidence we have for producing metallic zinc comes from the Zawar area in Rajasthan, India.
And why is it so difficult to smelt?
Well, the main challenge is that it vaporizes at a relatively low temperature around 1,000 degrees Celsius, which is inconveniently about the same temperature you need to actually smelt its ore.
Oh, right. So as soon as you make it.
Poof, it turns into vapor. And normally that vapor would just reoxidize in the furnace air and be lost. You would get solid metal.
So how did they solve that?
Ancient Indians devised this incredibly ingenious method called downward distillation. It's described in texts like the Rasaratnakara by Nagarjuna from the early Christian era.
Downward distillation.
Yeah. They used specifically designed retorts, basically. Sealed earthenware vessels and furnaces. The setup allowed the zinc vapor to form, travel downwards into a cooler condensation chamber below the furnace, and solidify into metal before it had a chance to reoxidize.
That is incredibly clever.
It really is. And for centuries, metallic zinc was virtually unknown in Europe. It wasn't until William Champion established commercial smelting in Bristol in the 1740s.
And his process.
Interestingly, it bore a strong resemblance to that Zawar method. It's very likely the knowledge was transferred, probably via the East India Company.
Wow. Another example of knowledge transfer.
Oh, exactly. Well, and sometimes you even see these innovations combined. There's a beautiful historical dagger found in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
It has a blade of high-carbon Wootz steel, and the hilt is made of something called bidraware, which is a high-zinc alloy, over 90% zinc finely inlaid with silver. Two major Indian metallurgical innovations in one object.
Truly astounding. It just makes you realize the depth of scientific understanding they must have had, even without, modern instruments.
Absolutely. Empirical science at its finest.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Let's move from physical craftsmanship, like metals and textiles, to the mastery of the mind and body.
Right.
We're talking strategy, well-being, extraordinary cognitive feats, things that continue to impress us today.
A good place to start here is a game many of us know and love. Chess.
Chess. Definitely Indian origins there, right?
Correct. It originated in India around the 7th century CE. It was known as chaturanga.
Chaturanga. What does that mean?
It literally means 4 divisions of the military, and its pieces represented infantry, cavalry, elephantry, and chariotry.
Which evolved into our modern pieces.
Exactly. Pawns, knights, bishops, and rooks. What really defined chaturanga, though, and set it apart from earlier board games,
What was that?
was that the pieces had different powers, different ways of moving, and victory depended entirely on the fate of one single piece, the king.
Unlike dice games where it's more chance.
Precisely. This was strategy, foresight. It was a profound departure. And a common theory links its development to India's, mathematical enlightenment.
Including the invention of zero.
That's often cited, yes. That abstract thinking perhaps paved the way for a game like chess.
It's fascinating, too, to see how chaturanga transformed as it traveled across continents. What kind of changes did it go through on that journey?
Well, first it spread to Persia. There it became known as chatrang, or shotrang.
Chaturanga, okay.
Then it continued its journey through the Muslim world and eventually reached Christian Europe, mainly via Spain and Italy.
And the rules changed along the way.
They did. The forms and rules evolved. Notably, during the European Renaissance, around the 15th century, the movements of the bishop and, even more significantly, the queen were dramatically enhanced, made the game much faster, more dynamic.
The powerful queen. That was a later addition.
Well, the piece existed, but its power level was significantly boosted in Europe, yes. And European chess pieces also changed. They shifted from sort of abstract, non-representational forms to carved images of men, animals, kings, queens.
More literal representations.
Right, and the cultural impact in Europe was immense. Chess became this prestigious pastime associated with nobility, widely mentioned in literature.
But not always approved of.
True. At times it was even denounced by the church,
Yeah.
partly because of its growing popularity and sometimes its association with gambling or, general revelry.
Interesting. And what about today? We've seen this incredible surge of Indian chess talent recently. What sparked that, do you think?
Absolutely. There's been a definite chess revolution in India, and it was largely inspired by Viswanathan Anand becoming world champion back in 2007.
Anand, right. A huge moment.
Huge. His success wasn't just a personal victory. It really led to a boom in chess clubs, increased general interest across the country, especially in South India and Chennai, which is his home turf.
So he had a big impact.
Immense. It's a unique role he played for his home country. You could maybe compare it to Magnus Carlsen's impact in Norway. And Anand's triumph basically showed a whole new generation what was possible.
Inspiring a new wave of grandmasters.
Exactly. A whole new wave.
Okay, so from the strategic battlefield of chess, let's explore something different. The intricate balance of the human body and mind. Let's start with Ayurveda.
Ayurveda, yes. A very deep tradition.
How does this ancient system approach health? It's more than just medicine, isn't it?
Oh, much more. Ayurveda is really an alternative medicine system with incredibly deep roots in India. It's sometimes even considered the fifth Veda.
The fifth Veda, wow.
Yeah, it emphasizes a truly holistic approach to health. It encompasses the body, the mind, and the soul.
So what are the core ideas?
Well, its core concepts revolve around what are called the three elemental doshas: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Doshas.
Think of them as fundamental energies or principles that govern different bodily and mental functions.
Yeah.
Air, fire, water, earth, water elements, roughly.
Okay.
And a balance, or samyatva, of these doshas leads to health, while an imbalance, or vimatva, results in disease. This balance also influences a person's unique constitution, their prakriti.
So everyone has a unique balance.
Exactly. Other key concepts include Agni, that's the biological fire governing metabolism. Then there are the dhatus, the 7 essential bodily tissues, and malas, the metabolic wastes, plus the concept of ama, which refers to undigested toxins that can sort of accumulate in the body if digestion or metabolism is impaired.
Right. So practically speaking, what does this mean for someone trying to live healthier using Ayurvedic principles? What kinds of practices does it recommend?
Well, Ayurvedic treatments and prevention, they primarily focus on building a healthy metabolic system, right? Maintaining good digestion is key.
Makes sense.
So there's a strong emphasis on diet, particularly understanding the 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent, and adjusting your intake based on the season, and importantly, your individual body type or dosha balance.
Personalized diets, essentially.
Very much so. And daily hygiene practices are central too. Regular bathing, teeth cleaning, oil pulling, swishing oil, like sesame or coconut oil, in your mouth for several minutes. Tongue scraping, skin care, using oils. And of course, exercise, yoga, and meditation are integral for maintaining that balance.
Are there specific therapies too?
Oh yes. Things like Shirodhara, where warm, medicated oil is gently poured onto the forehead. It's used for promoting deep sleep, mental clarity, calming the nervous system. And it leverages various herbs, of course, like ashwagandha, brahmi, many others, for their specific medicinal properties.
It sounds like a very rich and comprehensive system, but how does Ayurveda fit into, say, our contemporary understanding of health, especially outside India?
That's a complex question. In modern India, it's actually quite integrated. Many insurers now cover Ayurvedic treatments. There's even a dedicated government ministry, the Ministry of AYUSH, which promotes traditional systems like Ayurveda, yoga, Unani, Siddha, and homeopathy.
Okay, so it's supported institutionally.
Within India, yes. However, it's also true that from an external viewpoint, particularly within Western conventional medicine, some critics might characterize parts of it as, well, pseudoscience, or lacking sufficient rigorous large-scale clinical trial evidence by modern standards.
So there's some friction there.
There can be.
Yeah.
And historically, you can't ignore the impact of colonialism. British criticisms of indigenous medicine became, as one source put it, increasingly strident, which unfortunately led to its marginalization for a significant period.
Right, that historical context is important. Okay, so from inner balance with Ayurveda, let's explore something more about outward discipline and ancient self-mastery. What about the martial art Kalaripayattu?
Ah, Kalaripayattu.
Yes.
Yes, fascinating. It hails from Kerala in South India.
And it's old, right? Really old.
It's recognized as one of the world's oldest martial arts, yes. Its roots stretch back millennia. But it's described as much more than just physical training. It's seen as a deeper form of training.
Deeper how?
It works simultaneously on the body and the mind. The goal is to enhance physical performance, yes, but also heighten awareness of movement and fundamentally shape one's mindset, one's focus.
Interesting. What are the movements like?
Its forms are often inspired by animals, the lion, the snake, the monkey, as well as various traditional weapons like swords, shields, staffs, daggers.
Inspired by animals.
Yes, practitioners are encouraged to sort of enter the way of the animal or the object to embody its qualities, transforming their body's capabilities. Speed, power, flexibility, grounding.
Wow.
For example, there's something called the Charma fight, which focuses on short stick or knife fighting. It emphasizes elegant speed, precise movements, and it's often said to be driven by a kind of female energy, not just brute muscle highlighting agility, adaptability, flow.
That's a really powerful concept, integrated training of mind and body. Now, what about an innovation that's purely about the power of the human mind? Something really astounding that, frankly, few people could even conceive of doing.
This brings us to something truly remarkable called Shatavgan, or sometimes Shatavgan. It comes from the Jain tradition.
Shatavdan. What does it mean?
It translates roughly to 100 states of extraordinary attention of the brain.
100. Okay, what does that involve?
Okay, imagine this. A Shatavdani is an individual who can listen to or observe over 100 different questions or tasks given by various people, usually over a period of 2 or 3 hours.
Without notes?
Without any notes or electronic devices.
Right.
They then have to recall and answer these questions or perform the tasks, not just in the same sequence they were given, but also in reverse sequence or even completely random sequences requested by the audience. And often, while doing all this recall, they might simultaneously be performing complex mathematical calculations mentally.
That sounds impossible. Seriously.
It sounds impossible, but it's a documented skill. Srimad Rajchandra, who was actually a spiritual guru to Mahatma Gandhi.
Gandhi's guru.
Yes. He famously demonstrated these incredible mnemonic powers in Mumbai back in the late 19th century. And it profoundly impressed Gandhi, who wrote about it.
Are there people who can do this today?
Yes. There are contemporary practitioners like Munishri Ajichandra Sakarji who continue this tradition. It's absolutely breathtaking to witness.
Is there any scientific understanding of how this works?
Well, scientific analysis is exploring it. They're looking into mechanisms like massive parallel processing in the brain, perhaps non-local memory access. Some even speculate about quantum holographic mechanisms, though that's more theoretical.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If such mental feats were possible, what other layers of insight did these ancient traditions hold about how the mind, maybe even the universe, works?
Exactly. That kind of intellectual rigor and maybe holistic perspective resonates with accounts you hear from figures like Nikola Tesla.
The inventor.
Yes. He was apparently deeply interested in Asian spiritual traditions. And reports suggest he traced many of his engineering breakthroughs back to, well, spiritual insights or altered states of consciousness. It echoes this theme you find sometimes, this connection between science and spirituality across civilizations.
That's a fascinating connection. Okay, finally, let's talk about an area that affects absolutely everyone, everywhere. Public health and sanitation.
Critically important, yes.
It's often seen as a modern challenge, right? Clean water, toilets. But India has a fascinating and very long historical legacy here too, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. For millennia, ancient Indian civilizations showed a really early and quite sophisticated understanding of public health. Just think of the urban planning in the Indus Valley civilization cities like Mohenjo-daro.
Right, the drainage system.
Exactly. Advanced drainage systems, public baths, even private latrines connected to the system. This was centuries, millennia ahead of many other parts of the world at the time.
So that legacy of prioritizing sanitation has deep roots.
Very deep. And it continues today. You see it reflected in remarkable modern initiatives like the Swachh Bharat mission, or SBM.
The Clean India mission, launched when?
Launched by the Indian government in 2014. And it was specifically aimed at improving public sanitation right across the country, particularly tackling open defecation.
And the results.
Yeah.
Have they been significant?
The data is pretty impressive, yes. By 2020, something like 100 million toilets had been constructed. National rates of open defecation fell dramatically from around 60% down to 19%. That effectively doubled toilet availability in many areas.
How did they achieve that scale?
Well, beyond just building toilets, the program really stressed local community mobilization. Using what they called an information, education, and communication, or IEC approach, to drive behavioral change.
Right, it's not just about infrastructure.
Exactly. Behavior change is key.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture of public health, especially for, say, vulnerable populations like young children?
Well, there's some compelling recent research on that. A 2024 paper published in Nature Scientific Reports found a clear association between the toilet construction under SBM and a significant reduction in infant and child mortality.
Really? They could quantify that link.
They could. Their analysis estimated that every 10% increase in toilets built under SBM was associated with a reduction of about 0.9 infant deaths per 1,000 live births.
Wow. What does that translate to in actual numbers?
Given the program's scale, it translates to potentially saving around 67,235 infant lives per year.
That's incredible. How does sanitation link so directly to infant mortality?
The pathways are pretty clear. Improved sanitation drastically reduces the incidence of diarrheal diseases. Diarrhea leads to dehydration and malabsorption of nutrients, both of which are major contributors to poor child health and, tragically, mortality.
Especially in young children.
Especially, and this is particularly crucial in India, which unfortunately still accounts for about 14% of the world's 5.4 million deaths among children under 5 each year. So interventions like SBM can have a massive impact.
So the research continues on this.
Oh, yes. The paper also highlighted the ongoing need for study to figure out the most effective bundling of interventions, combining water, sanitation, and hygiene, the WASHI initiatives, to get the maximal positive impact on health outcomes.
It's a powerful modern example with ancient echoes.
Definitely.
We have truly taken a deep dive today, haven't we? Uncovering all these layers of history and human ingenuity. From the clothes on our backs.
Textiles, but
to the very steel in our world, like Wootz.
Metals, zinc.
From strategic games like chess to these profound wellness practices like Ayurveda, Kalaripayattu.
Mind and body.
That incredible mental feat of Shatabtan. And even connecting ancient wisdom to modern public health initiatives like the Clean India mission. It's been quite a journey through India's ancient innovations.
They really have.
Highlighting their diversity and their profound and clearly enduring global impact.
And I think if we connect all this to the bigger picture, what it really reveals is this remarkable continuity of knowledge. It's a testament to the power of observation, of critical thinking, and maybe more holistic understanding of the world that existed back then.
Yeah.
These aren't just, fascinating historical facts to put in a museum.
Yeah.
They represent enduring principles, genuine breakthroughs that actually continue to resonate and, in many ways, inform modern practices and sciences even today.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe ponder. What stands out to you about these ancient innovations we've discussed? Perhaps it's the sheer ingenuity, developing a steel like Wootz centuries ahead of its time.
Or maybe the deep wisdom of a holistic health system like Ayurveda.
Or perhaps it's that underlying spirit, that resourcefulness that allowed such complex intellectual, technological, societal feats to emerge back then. It kind of reminds us, doesn't it, that true progress often comes from a really deep understanding and maybe appreciation of our shared human past.
Well said. A lot to think about.